Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel, and this is the Peso Pro episode. I actually have a guest and a friend with us today. Let me just introduce him before we get started in this version of Money Talks. About 2 months ago, I started this as a sub-series in the channel where we talk about other people's personal finance journey. So with us is Clint. Clint is a close friend and a colleague in the consumer goods space. He has had a very storied career in the same company, and he calls himself actually an accidental or a very veteran or veteranong OFW. He has gone through many assignments and has actually lived in about 3 countries. So actually, I want to talk to Clint about his own personal finance journey. So, Clint, thank you for saying yes to the invitation and for being with us today.
Hey, first of all, thanks, Philip, for inviting me to your show. So
Yes.
excited. I've watched some of your episodes before, and I'm glad to be part of your conversation today.
Nice. So, thanks, Clint. Again, as I said, gawin lang natin tong kwentuhan, and I hope the listeners or the
Parang nasa
audience,
cafeteria lang
ganon
tayo.
lang siya. So, parang, ano lang to, parang break in an office day. So yes, I thank you, Clint, for being with us. So, Clint, maybe if you can tell us about your career, something about yourself to kick us off.
Dapat may background music to ng ano. Ta
Correct.
na 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 na.
Wala ako nung maalaala mo, kaya intro.
Sige, simulan natin nung may buhok pa ako. I started my journey, my professional journey in the Philippines, but very quickly, in about less than 3 years, I got a chance to relocate and work in Japan, and then from 8 years there, 3 years in Singapore, before I had a chance to go back to the Philippines. And only after 3 years, I was kicked out again and asked to go back to Japan, Korea, and now in Singapore. So I've worked for 25 years now in
Wow.
total. In total, 25 years. And I'm excited to share my professional journey to you and your viewers today, especially those who are just starting up. And as we talked before the show, I want to reflect on my not just my career, but more importantly, my journey in investing, my journey in how I looked at making money as life and livelihood in mind together. I think they do go hand in hand, and my view and my behaviors and my risk appetites have changed through the years. So let's get it on.
Nice. So, Clint, you actually shared that was a very, I think you had multiple international assignments, right? Which is very very interesting. So and as you said, no simula pa to nung may buhok ka pa. Ngayon, like after all those 25 years, I'm sure you've had a lot of different roles within the company. You've also undergone multiple different cultures, right? Because those countries have their own very unique sets of behaviors, cultures. When you were starting out, right? Because a majority of the audience that I have on the channel are actually those who are starting out in their careers, not really sure kung ano ba yung ginagawa nila or gusto ba nila yung gagawin nila. Maybe as you reflect in those times, like you said, 3 years lang with the Philippines and then you moved to Japan, were there any notable learnings or things that really come to mind when you think about that time in your career at the start?
I like what you said about that sense of thinking you have a goal, career goal, and not being sure about it. Yeah, I started my first job was nothing related to my degree. I'm an environmental science degree holder. My first job had nothing to do with environmental science. I got the job because I was hanging out with a friend at their home. He also just graduated then, and his brother, who was at that time in his late 20s, started a consulting firm and needed someone, and he had a project, a real estate research project in Cagayan de Oro City, and he needed someone who could speak the local dialect to help his team do the research. And that was my only qualification. Like,
Okay.
yay, I can speak Bisaya game. I had nothing to do with my degree. And I did that for about 2 years, that line of work, where, it's nothing to do with my degree. It was field work. And then after 2 years, that's when I started thinking, okay, what do I want to do? What do I really want to do? And frankly, I had no clear idea. I looked at where friends have been, you know, uh, people I know who were 2, 3 years older than me, what they've been doing. That's as far as foresight could be at 20, 22 years old, 23 years old. And even when I started in our company, I was not, in fact, I wanted to be a lawyer. I was about to apply for law school when the company told me, we want to send you out to Japan. And so my first response to my boss, and that's why I said I'm an unintentional OFW, was, can I say no? Because my plan was
So you really
to
take up
study
law.
law while working, right? Because I saw a lot of my friends in law school and they seemed to be happy. Or they seem to know what they want to do. I want that. So, and 23 years on, I'm still in the same company doing things that are also not related to my degree to a large extent. So, what I'm trying to say is it's okay not to know or not be very clear. What's important is do try to formulate a vision, even if you're not sure how it's going to happen. It's good to have something in front of you so that you can go for it, right? You can set plans and develop skills towards something. If the world changes, if your view changes, it's also okay. If there are opportunities that are outside that, decide if you know if you want to change. So be open to change your vision, but always keep something in front of you. And if I look around my peer group, very few of us stuck to a vision that we had when we were in our 20s. Very few. Mainly those who wanted to be doctors. I
Mm.
think, because there was a clear path. And those who wanted to be lawyers. It's easier, right?
Yeah.
Pag sumakay ka na sa train na yon, alam
So,
mo yung saan
sunod-sunod
pupunta.
na. Yeah.
Right? And some of them did still change career later on, but still, sila yung pinaka nag-stick. But for many of us who had uh, what you call this didn't have as clear as a path, it was also okay. You just have to articulate a vision and be ready for that to change.
But Clint, I think to your point, right? I like that, but to me, like it sounds very scary. So I'm an accountancy grad. I took accountancy, did the whole CPA board exam, and then landed a finance job. So very very traditional, very very diretso lang, right? I mean, what gave you the courage and yung conviction that okay game na even if the only qualification was speaking Bisaya or like this was really not related to
Yeah.
environmental science, like what were their mentors or what was it, is it just an internal sense of let's go, or what was there at the
I,
time?
I wish I could tell you I had wisdom and courage then. But as a 21-year-old, feeling very insecure because most of my friends already had jobs and I had none, the main driver was need. I just needed a job.
Mm.
And so I went for it because in my mind, if I sign up for this, I could still go on and look for other jobs.
Mm.
Right? So I was not allergic to any job.
Mm.
Maybe that's what I want to share is go for whatever's in front of you. You're not locked into that.
Mm.
Never at that age, time is on your side and you can still change 5,
It's true.
10, 15 years on and you still have a lot of runway, right?
Mm.
In fact, this is one of the best mentorship wisdom I got. Uh, I was maybe 10 years ago. I had a talk with my mentor, and no, less than 10 years ago, because he changed job after more than 20 years. And I asked him, how do you process that, like changing jobs at that stage? Because I like I just want to know if like if I change career, when is the latest I could do that? Because in my mind, I want to build skills, I want to build tenure in a company so that when I retire, it's more comfortable. And he gave me his view. He said, 35, 40, don't care. You still have 20 years before you can retire anyway, even if you make a mistake in career and in investment. He
Mm.
told me, he extended this to investment. Even if you get wiped out, you still have your skills, you still have your health, you still have time to make it up. If retirement at 60, now 65 for some countries, right? So be mindful of the runway.
Mm.
And that shifted my view on risks. I was telling you earlier also, because yeah, invest only what you can lose, but also in my mind, invest only what you can replace.
Mm.
And so if I still have runway before my target
Then you're
retirement
able to
age,
take a
then
bit
I
more.
can lose this much. After a few years, I can gain that back, and then it allows me, or it has allowed me to take bigger risks than when I was younger, which is crazy. Looking back, right? I could have taken more risk if I had this understanding earlier on.
Got it. And I think I like, Clint, two things that you said, right? One is not being afraid to shift, because I think even for me, right, there's always that comfort in knowing what the runway looks like, right? Like I know what the next role is, or like what the next progression is,
Ah,
but not knowing that, right, it's very very scary. Like it's like staring down a tunnel. If I know where the tunnel leads, it's somehow comfortable. It doesn't have to necessarily be the best route, but just because I know what's on the other side, I think that's where people tend to gravitate towards, right? Na alam nila na, okay, ito na yung expected of me, eh. So ito na yung next na gagawin. And so I think a lot of people are actually locked into that tunnel or that road because that's how society sort of shaped expectations and whatnot. So I like the way you place na, well, you can actually change. Like you're never really locked into one thing, even if it feels like you're locked into one thing. And then second, I like how you said it in an investment point of view, where if you don't understand and if you don't see that runway or this concept of how much you can replace, then you're also a bit more scared. Na, and I think this one I actually can probably share a personal story as well. Like for example, when I was learning about cryptocurrencies and whatnot, right, where cryptos are typically being taught as, oh, sobrang volatile niyan, it can wipe out your money, etc., etc. But if you really think about it, right, I have the runway, and I can actually replace the money that I can risk. So when that clicked in my mind, I was actually saying na, pwede din naman pala. Like, what's
game.
there to lose, right? I mean,
Yes.
we're not talking about your entire life savings, but if that's something you can replace, and if you have the runway to actually make those calculated risks earlier on, or even later part in your career, it's gonna be okay in the grand scheme of things. So I actually like that. I
Yeah.
didn't think about it as replaceability, but now that I heard it from you, it actually makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and going back, as I was listening to you, I heard your first question again in my head. So sorry if I go back to
No
that,
problem.
because you asked about courage, right?
Yep.
And related to this point now on the willingness to go beyond
Mm.
a tunnel with a clear view inside. I think I grew up always challenging the tunnel or whatever was the expectations of what could be. Courage came as an enabler, but the first trigger was always ambition. I spent so much of my childhood, and it's good that I have this background of the sea. A lot of my afternoons growing up was just sitting on the beach, not as beautiful as this, but looking out to the horizon. I loved waiting for the sunset. I would wait for the sunset from 3 p.m.
Wow.
Yeah, and I used that time just think and dream what's beyond there. What's
Mm.
beyond there? And I had a good buddy, and he would sit with me, and we would play in the sand and just think and dream. You know, some of our dreams included as boats were passing, because we were. I'm from Iligan City, an
Mm.
industrial city, so a lot of big ships would come either to deliver raw materials or to take out products, right? coconut oil and
Mm.
whatnot. And we would dream of like this tanker. I want one like that someday. What if that's mine? That's mine. That's mine. Or where are they going?
Mm.
So that I I was very comfortable dreaming up stuff
Mm.
beyond what I could see, beyond what people told me could be.
Mm.
So when I was from elementary to high school, most of my friends went to the a high school in our city. Majority of them. Uh, I wanted to go there too. So that was the plan. But then when the Philippine Science High School campus opened up in Davao,
Mm.
I talked to a few of my other friends and said, "Yeah, let's go there." So and then they said yes, but they never went. I was the only
Okay.
one who went. I wanted to try to go beyond what is in front of me,
Mm.
what I thought the world was presenting as options, and that developed a mindset. Now maybe it's better said as growth mindset, but I didn't know growth mindset then.
Before.
It was just a feeling of self-nurtured dissatisfaction of today, of what's going on, and then dreaming up what else could be, and yeah, then mustering up the courage to go for that.
Yep.
Because life has a tendency to set you up in a tunnel, to box you in. I hate that feeling. Maybe I'm claustrophobic in that sense, no. Ayaw ko
Mm.
talaga yung ano, yung yan na yan.
Mm.
So I'm very rebellious that way. I'm
Mm.
very rebel. I hate being constrained by my own reality or of those around me. Tapos bahala na, no? Pag may vision ka na of beyond the box, then
Mm.
figure it out. I'm also not afraid to work hard. That fuels my courage. Na, pero sige, try natin yan. Mahirap yan. Maraming bago. Marami kang kailangan matutunan. O di sige.
Edi
So
aralin.
what? Aralin.
But I think yun nga, Clint, I think you place it very very well, no, na typically when we talk about dreams, it sounds cheesy, right, na parang oh, may ambition ka and goals, and I think where the disparity of people who actually achieve those dreams, or at least try very very well and land somewhere close to that dream, right, not everybody reaches that eventually. Like I have dreamt maybe of becoming a lawyer and whatnot, and I think to your point then, things really do change. And I like the way you said na dream first and challenge the status quo. But obviously, let's also not forget, right, for everyone listening, that there is a certain level of skill building, personal
Always.
commitment,
Always.
learning, not being able to, not being afraid to work hard and learn new
Yeah.
things, right? I think those are the less cheesy stuff that tends to get left out when they hear advice. So I like that you place that in a end-to-end kind of view.
And a practical view, right,
Mm.
with respect to skill building. Because I also don't go for things that I have zero skills on.
Okay.
My formula is 50-50.
Okay.
I'll go for a new role, job, ambition if I already have at least half of the skills that's
Mm.
gonna be needed, and then half I'll have to
Figure
learn,
out.
right? More or less, that's my rule of thumb.
Got it.
I've taken roles that are more skewed towards I don't know anything, but but never zero.
Yeah.
And the older you get in your career, you realize you've also accumulated enough skills
Skills.
na mas maging madali yon. And
Got
when
it.
you're younger, the tendency is you really jump into something you had no idea about.
Mm-mm.
Right? So, yun, at my stage in my life now, I go for 50-50.
Got it. That makes sense. And talking about 50-50, Clint, right? I mean, typically, when we see people who have worked their entire lives, right? Like chosen employment as the route towards whatever your ambitions and goals are, like including financial goals. When you talk about a 25-year career, to me, parang before, pag nakarinig ako ng somebody na may 10-15-year career, parang wow na ako. Ako na ngayon yun. So parang
Yes.
so when I hear 25-year career, right, a thought always pops up into mind na when we talk about, especially in the millennial crowd, there's this common consensus that businesses are the way or the pathways to wealth. Meaning parang
Yeah.
if you stay in employment, wala, you work for someone else or you're in the rat race, quote unquote, right? So you have to go out and figure out a way to build a business for yourself kasi yun lang yung only way to wealth. But I've seen time and again friends like you who have actually maybe started a business but also kept their employment for so long. So was there ever like a business that you started or is still doing, and how are you balancing that with your current employment?
Yeah, thank you. That's a very good question. I think the itch to do something more and start investing, start entrepreneurial stuff,
Yep.
started very quickly when I moved to Japan. Simply because I suddenly had a lot more cash
Mm.
than I need. It was a
Mm.
big jump. That's the gift of being an OFW
That's true.
early on in my career. I was localized in Japan, and my I was newly married, so expenses were relatively
Lower
manageable, lower versus today.
versus today.
And I've never had access to that amount of cash. And when I did, I looked to friends and family who had and looked at what they were doing, and I saw that they were investing in something. And so I started talking to my cousins, to my friends who were doing some entrepreneurial stuff, and I started to invest a little bit with them. And my longest investment now is with a friend who's very entrepreneurial. He's based in Dumaguete, and he's been with his family doing everything from bakery to water refilling stations.
Serial
When
entrepreneur.
phone cards were big, it was
Ah.
so it's very serial entrepreneur family, and I was so inspired. And his parents were my foster parents when I was high school in Davao. So I was very confident with the family. No, I didn't understand much about the business then. I said, I just want in so that I can grow and learn with you.
Mm.
And that's been going on for decades now with them. I've also done like with my cousin, invested in what you call this gas stations, and found out that cash flow is very important in this business, and the money disappeared. It's like, oh, I thought you never that's a business that will never
Mm,
fold,
never
but
fall.
the cash flows need. That's when I understood the value of cash flow. That it's
Mm.
not just about profit margin.
Yep.
That even if your margins are good, if you run out of cash, business stops.
Yep.
Yeah, I've tried and failed in so many things, but it was always fun. I think it's just a requirement because okay, what's the potential return, and then what can I see, what can I touch
Wow.
about it, right? So like when I started putting in some investments in water refilling station, when I went home one December,
Mm.
I said, okay, I have money in this kind of business, but I don't really know how it works. So I
Mm.
went in one of our refilling station in Iligan City just to figure out how does this business run. I went in, I look at the tax, and I asked, of course, I asked permission from the
Yes.
owner. Then how much is this business? Can I buy this? I had no money, right? But I just wanted to imagine, can I really buy this whole thing? Because right now I'm just investing in part of it.
Mm.
And then at that time, I think she told me it's 4 million pesos for this entire thing. Like, ooh, kaya pala maliit lang yung share ko dun sa.
Okay.
But I I wanted to enjoy, and
Mm.
touch and feel and get educated. So the learning part of it is always fun.
Mm.
So that even if I lose money with that investment, I still learn something.
Right. And I think tama yun Clint, when you shared about trying it out first, right? And trying to get the learning from the business. I think also to a lot of people, right? This doesn't have to be a big investment. I always recall back in my elementary days or high school days ata where I used to sell yema for so I buy from hindi pa nga ako nagluluto noon so wala akong cooking skills for to make yema, so it was really just a retail buy and sell. So I had a family friend who has this store. I reserved mga 10 packs of yema. I sell it for retail, so tingi-tingi to my classmates during
Yeah.
break. And I think to a large degree, right, the lessons you learn from that of accounts receivable, mangolekta ng mga utang ng mga kaklase mo na hindi nagbabayad, or how do you price the yema so that competitive ka against the canteen, for example. I know probably not the
Yeah.
best example. But those kinds of things that you learn while doing all these things can be big or small. So I really still remember that even when I do pricing analysis for a
Yeah.
consumer goods company, right? It's all the same. And when you talk to customers, I think probably when you've had that cash flow issue with your gas station, right? Even somebody who's not really in finance or in really business roles, you're able to relate that to your employment as well, right? So do those learnings translate into a more holistic Clint, both in and out of the employment? I think yes.
Yeah, and it's in fact, um, what also sparked my interest, going back to that point, was not just the cash, the more cash when I moved to Japan, but also I started to really understand uh, how my the company runs its business.
Mm.
Because one of the first thing I did when I joined the company was uh, I took I looked for a mentor in finance.
Mm.
Because when I started attending town halls and business meetings, I realized, crap, I don't understand what they're saying. I just had like no idea. And they seem excited. They would clap at things like, why? And so I asked a friend. He was a band three manager at that time, and I told him, sit down with me because I need help. So he coached me, explained to me about all the NOS, profit, how it all works. So I started my education on how businesses work, which then I wanted to reapply on my own. So that was the driver. And then, of course, as I learned outside, I understood better when I see sales figures and when our sales organization say, yeah, this play was like this and it impacted this. Like I get it more because I experienced it.
Mm.
Like when I had a chocolate business with a friend in 2012 to 14, somewhere in between that. So we made chocolates in in import and local. So South Cotabato chocolates with some import raw materials as well. Um, and that's when I realized packaging. If you want to premiumize,
Ah.
packaging is a big first step, right? So the first thing we did was, okay, we have the chocolate, but our packaging can be better. So we look
Mm.
for a better supplier, better graphics, then we could have a better pricing position. Right? And I learned that from the company because I saw how we look at packaging and its relationship to the proposition of the total brand.
Mm.
Right? So yeah, it's helpful. It makes the discussion more real and relatable if
Right.
you have your own business,
Yeah.
right?
I think that's the part that gets left out, right? Because typically when we talk about business, we talk about side hustle to increase income streams and try to get more money, right? I think that's probably the preliminary driver. But I also realize, like, and you're solidifying that with your examples, Clint, that sometimes when you do these things, right, the intangible benefits, because like example, my Yema business was not a multi-thousand business. It's like probably,
Multitask.
it's like probably ano na yon, madodoble ko na yung allowance ko and I was very happy kasi 200 index na ako sa aking earnings at that time, right? But I think if I look back, it wasn't the peso amount that really mattered more. It was all of those tiny things that sort of click and made
Yeah,
sense so that when you're ready, as you said earlier, right, the concept of we're 50-50, that now when I see a business, hindi na ako foreign to the concept of the business because alam ko na, margins lang yan. So it's the same as magkano ko ba binili, magkano ba papatong ko, ano yung kikitain ko, right? And I think
yeah,
those are kinds of things that people tend to overlook in the in the primary purpose of earning more, right? And I think the skill building part of it is also very valuable because it also prepares you for bigger things, right? Pag meron ng water refilling business, pag meron ka ng gas station, then you're talking about real money. But those fundamental things that you've learned will probably make you a bit more comfortable to take that leap.
Yeah, and also the concept of I was in research and development the first part of my first 11 years of my career. So I learned that in a big FMCG company like ours, R&D does not always start big.
Mm.
They prototype. They look at small and execution before you make it. You can scale it up. I was in new business development for a couple of years as well, and so that introduced me to the thinking of starting small, designing something and trying it out.
Mm.
Because for every one successful prototype, you probably have at least 10 to 100 that failed,
Mm.
right? So, and prototypes that were cooked up with the best technology and best minds in the business. So it made me humble as well, that if I want to try an investment or a business, I have to be ready that
Mm.
it or parts of it will
Will die.
fail and needs will have to evolve. That even though parang wag kang kasi in the beginning I wanted to design something na perfect.
Yep.
Parang i-design natin, it's perfect and it will work exactly as I expected. But that has never happened in any of my investments. Even a real estate investment na parang may drawing na yan. Ito yung bibili ka ng lupa, condo, or whatever. The sales person will already tell ito yung forecast growth niyan, ito yung when it will be ready, turnover. All of those plans are drawings until it happens. And so you have to be ready na kung ano yung assumptions mo coming in the design of the investment or the business, it's not gonna happen as it is, and have fun evolving it through the years, right? So yun, so naging ready ako emotionally for that, and I learned to have fun. I learned to have fun. Like my mom and I started a rice reselling side hustle for her.
Okay.
When she retired, so because she was working for a stevedoring company then, so marami siyang kilala na mga taong may cash flow challenges sa buhay.
Yep.
Who cannot buy a sack of rice.
Mm.
And so she knows how much they can afford. She knows how much they make in a week. And so she knows they can only afford this much, more or less, for rice. So I said, okay, why don't we buy sacks of rice?
Mm.
You repack it and make available to them in a sachet version of rice. Right? And yeah, I thought that was interesting. We can help these people that she knows, have access to rice and good quality rice. And we can make some margins along the way. And then, yeah, that's when I learned about the problem of debt collection.
Yes. And I think yung lahat ng yun, Clint, no, na parang, I think you're telling me all of these small stories that I think can happen to anyone if you actually choose to let yourself learn. I think that's the key message, and enjoy the process of learning and not being afraid to fail, but also obviously prepare to sort of minimize or mitigate the risk of failing. We're not saying na start it and bahala na, right? I mean, obviously you have to plan it out, but what you're saying is it doesn't really turn out how it was planned, and you cannot design it so perfectly that you know everything that's gonna happen. I hope you like that first part of this Money Talks with Clint. We talked about a variety of different topics, so if you want to learn more, please hit the subscribe button and the notification bell because we're uploading part 2 very soon. If it's already up, I'll also link it right here. So if you find it here, click on that so that you can continue the conversation.